The shadows of the modern world hide a terrifying truth that most men are too exhausted to see or acknowledge within their own decaying, tired frames. You see them every day in the iron temples, pushing weight with gritted teeth and desperate hearts. Yet their bodies remain soft, flat, and hauntingly hollow. Before we go deeper into semen retention mastery, subscribe to this channel and join our Telegram community link below. You'll get guidance, insights, and exclusive updates designed to accelerate your growth. Stay connected. Your discipline, focus, and transformation begin right here. They follow the protocols, they measure their proteins, and they sacrifice their sleep. But they are missing the one variable that dictates the very laws of power. Have you ever looked into the mirror and wondered why your effort does not translate into the magnetic, heavy presence of a true king or a predator? The answer is not found in a pill or a new training program, but in the silent, sacred alchemy occurring deep within your own biological and spiritual core. You are a vessel designed to hold a blinding fire. Yet you have spent years drilling holes into your own foundation, allowing your life force to leak. Imagine for a moment a man who no longer vibrates with the frantic energy of the desperate, but instead carries the weight of a mountain in his gaze. He does not need to shout to be heard because his very biology emits a frequency of absolute sovereignty that commands a room without a word. This is the man who has stopped the leak and begun the process of internal transmutation, turning a simple biological fluid into a source of infinite, raw potential. Every time you choose to cast away your seed for a fleeting moment of hollow pleasure, you are signing a contract with your own mediocrity and weakness. Your body stays trapped in a perpetual state of emergency recovery, unable to build greatness because it is constantly diverted toward replacing the very fuel you cast away. Energy that was destined to sharpen your mind and harden your muscles is repeatedly stolen, leaving you as a ghost of the man you were meant to be. Semen retention is the only path that changes this internal equation, shifting your system from a state of bankruptcy to a state of overflowing, massive biological surplus. When the seed is conserved, the body finally possesses the luxury of excess, allowing it to allocate resources toward the repair, growth, and elite performance of your frame. Muscles begin to respond with a terrifying speed because the central nervous system is no longer screaming in a state of chronic, self-inflicted, and deep chemical exhaustion. Workouts undergo a dark and powerful metamorphosis, fueled no longer by the borrowed stimulation of caffeine or anger, but by a deep, stored well of ancient vitality. Over time, your posture begins to shift, your spine straightens, and your physical presence grows heavier, as if you are finally becoming anchored to the very earth. This shift exposes a brutal reality that society tries to hide. Weak men are not weak because they lack effort, but because they leak their very soul. They cast away the fuel required to turn mere sweat into dense, functional mass, an unshakable psychological power that can withstand the harshest storms of life and fate. Retention rewires the internal circuitry that decides whether your muscle is built for combat or simply wasted away in the cold, dark silence of the night. Hormonal signals begin to stabilize. Recovery times drop into the realm of the supernatural, and the connection between your mind and your body becomes a razor-sharp blade. You begin to lift with a terrifying intent rather than blind aggression, moving with a calculated control that replaces the chaotic, weak fumbling of the perpetually drained. Long before the invention of modern fitness, ancient warrior cultures understood that strength was something to be guarded and stored, never spent on a whim or impulse. The legends of old tell of hunters and laborers who believed that the vitality accumulated inside the body was the only true source of a man's earthly power. Semen retention preserves this internal reserve, acting as a dam against the constant depletion of your most essential and precious biological and spiritual resources for life. When your energy is no longer expelled through the weakness of impulse, it remains trapped within, available to be weaponized for your greatest physical and mental outputs. Training no longer feels like you are borrowing strength from a tomorrow that may never come. It feels supported by an ocean of power that never runs dry. Your muscles respond with a density and force that shocks the uninitiated, because your entire nervous system is no longer running on the fumes of exhaustion. Psychology identifies this state as the ultimate conservation of resources, while history remembers it as the hallmark of disciplined, high-level, and sovereign masculine authority. Both paths agree on one singular point. Power only grows when the energy stays inside long enough to ferment, compound, and eventually explode into greatness. As this internal reserve builds, your recovery becomes a reliable force of nature, repairing tissue with an efficiency that leaves your peers standing in confused and envious awe. Your body stops the endless cycle of replenishment and begins the process of true enhancement, building a frame that is actually capable of sustaining a heavy load. Your sleep deepens into a state of profound regeneration. Inflammation vanishes from your joints, and your nervous system finally finds its center between the extremes of life. This allows every single training session to stack upon the last, creating a pyramid of strength rather than a circle of repetitive, soul-crushing, and pointless fatigue. A man who retains does not just push harder against the iron. He returns to the arena the next day with a soul that has already conquered the weight. Ancient texts frequently link the practice of restraint with the gift of endurance, because true endurance requires a massive surplus of internal, hidden, and potent biological energy. When the energy is constantly drained, the spirit of endurance collapses, leaving the man fragile and easily broken by the slightest pressure of the external world. When energy is conserved, effort becomes a sustainable fire that burns bright, even in the darkest and coldest winters of your personal and professional life. This is how retention quietly shifts the ceiling of what your physical body and your mental spirit can handle before they reach the point of absolute breaking. With a full vital reserve, the very quality of your muscular response changes, moving from a hollow puffiness to a dense, hard, and functional and impressive biological reality. Your movements become more connected, as if every fiber of your being is finally speaking the same language of power, precision, and unshakable intent for victory. Fatigue arrives much later than it used to because your system has a hidden backup power supply that the average leaky man can never hope to access. This is why a man who holds his vitality carries himself with a different gravity, his very walk signaling to the world that he is a master of himself. His posture reflects the stored strength of 1,000 hours of discipline, and his breathing reflects a capacity for life that is both rare and highly intense. His muscles respond to the slightest command because the signal sent from the nervous system is clear, loud, and supported by the raw power of his preserved seed. Ancient cultures did not separate the power of the muscles from the discipline of the spirit. They saw them as two sides of the same sacred coin. Semen retention restores this ancient connection, feeding your body from the inside out until your skin glows with health and your eyes burn with the predatory fire. A man with a full reserve does not just lift more weight. He outlasts the pressure, the resistance, and the fatigue in every arena he dares to enter. Across the blood-soaked pages of history, the greatest warriors were taught to abstain before conflict, because readiness was never seen as a mere emotional or psychological hype. It was recognized as a state of biological alignment, a tuning of the human instrument to the frequency of combat, survival, and ultimate, total, earthly dominance. When the sexual energy was conserved, the internal aggression of the man sharpened into a spear, instead of spilling out like a messy, aimless, and weak puddle. Focus tightened until the world became a blur of targets, and the body entered a state of alert, predatory calm. Ready to respond with lethal precision? Semen retention recreates this exact internal condition in the modern man, stopping the violent swings between frantic stimulation and the soul-crushing lows of a chemical crash. Your system begins to hold tension like a perfectly coiled steel spring, ready to release its energy at the exact moment of your own choosing. Psychology might label this as heightened arousal control, but the ancient masters simply knew it as the only true way to be prepared for the unknown. Your body feels awake and alive without being frantic, and it feels strong and capable without being reckless or wasteful with its limited and precious force. That delicate balance is what separates the man of controlled, directional power from the man of wasted, chaotic force who burns out before the battle begins. As your retention continues, this state of high-level readiness becomes your new baseline, a permanent foundation upon which you build your empire and your physical legacy. Neural signals are no longer dulled by the fatigue of release, meaning your muscles answer your mind with a speed that feels almost like a premonition of movement. Effort stops feeling like a desperate struggle against the gravity of your own laziness and starts feeling like a deliberate, powerful, and focused act of creative will. When you lift, run, or strike, your body answers the call immediately, without the hesitation or the stuttering of a nervous system that has been drained of fuel. This happens because your internal energy is no longer fragmented or scattered, but is instead concentrated into a single, terrifying point of absolute and total masculine intent. Biology supports this transformation through the improvement of your neuromuscular efficiency and the steadying of your hormonal signaling across the entire landscape of your physical frame. History stands as a witness, showing generations of disciplined men who understood that a man who leaks his strength is a man who is slow to act. What makes this state fundamentally different from ordinary motivation is the sheer depth and the permanence of the internal shift you are currently experiencing in your soul. Motivation is a flickering flame that rises and falls with the wind, but readiness is a constant heat that stays with you in the dark. Retention conditions your body for the inevitability of confrontation, stress, and the raw requirements of survival in a world that is increasingly hostile to your growth. Even in the mundane moments of everyday life, Your posture signals a state of high-level alertness that commands the respect and the space of those around. Your movements carry an intent that was previously missing, and fatigue no longer has the power to dominate the experience of your daily effort or your goals. This is why the strength found through retention feels serious and heavy. It is not a costume for display, but a weapon forged for the fires of action. The body begins to prepare itself on a primal, deep level because it senses the presence of stored power and knows that a great exertion is coming. Readiness is not something you can think your way into through logic. It is a state that the body enters only when the energy is kept. When your retention is sustained over weeks and months, a specific kind of pressure begins to build within the tissues and the nerves of your physical body. Sexual energy is the most powerful force in nature, and it does not simply vanish when you choose to hold it. It accumulates and it eventually demands a transformation. Your nervous system senses this massive, stored electrical charge and begins to look for a productive, creative, or destructive outlet for this rising and powerful tide. Historically, this is why the most disciplined and powerful men were naturally drawn toward the hardest labor, the most intense combat, and the grandest physical creations of man. The body begins to seek motion with a desperate hunger, because motion is the only way that this excess vitality can express itself safely without burning you. Your muscles feel restless, as if they are being fed by a current of high-voltage electricity. And sitting still starts to feel like a slow and painful torture. You feel pulled toward intense exertion, not out of a sense of moral obligation or guilt, but out of a raw, primal, and unstoppable physical instinct to move. This is the emergence of the somatic drive, a state where your body demands to be used, tested, and pushed to its absolute and total breaking point. Redirection of arousal is the psychological term, but the ancient wisdom describes it as an energy that demands expression through the channel of your personal strength. As this drive strengthens, physical work stops feeling like a difficult choice and starts feeling like a necessary and satisfying release of the internal pressure you hold. Lifting weights, sprinting against the wind, or striking a heavy bag feels like a sacred ritual of balance, a way to discharge the lightning without losing the source. This is the point where your training becomes deeply and spiritually satisfying instead of feeling like a draining chore that you must endure to look a certain way. Each session leaves you calmer, more centered, and more grounded in your own masculinity, instead of leaving you exhausted, shaky, and depleted of your core. Biology supports this shift through the increased recruitment of motor units and a mind-muscle connection that feels as if you can feel every individual fiber of tissue. History is filled with men who trained not for the vanity of the mirror, but because their own internal power made stillness feel wrong and unnatural to them. Muscular growth accelerates during this phase because your body is finally being forced to adapt to the massive demands of your own internal, stored and powerful energy. When the energy compounds, your physical tissue must strengthen and densen simply to handle the electrical load that your nervous system is now carrying every day. Your muscles grow denser and harder because they are functioning as the pressure valves for a vitality that most men will never have the courage to hold. Recovery ceases to be a passive process of waiting and becomes an active process of regulation. As your body reorganizes itself around the new standard of power, you begin to crave the resistance of the world, seeking out the hardest paths because your body knows it has the fuel to conquer any mountain you face. Retention does not magically create a new physique out of thin air. It creates the internal environment where greatness is the only possible and logical outcome for you. It creates the conditions where muscular development becomes the most natural and the most honest expression of the excess power you have chosen to keep within. If this video gave you real value, tap the thanks button here. Support helps me keep creating deeper content like this. Every thanks is a spark that keeps this mission alive. Your support means more than you know. You are no longer a man chasing a result. You are a man who has become the result, an integrated being of fire, muscle, and an unshakable and terrifying will. The seed is the key to the lock, but the retention is the hand that turns the key and opens the door to your potential. Stop the leak, guard the fire, and watch as your body transforms into a monument of the discipline. You have finally found the strength to embrace and hold. The real power of the seed is not in its release, but in its transformation into the very fabric of the man you were always destined to become. If this video charged your internal battery, please show some love. Give this a quick like and subscribe to make sure you never miss an energy upgrade. I love seeing our global community grow, so please drop your location in the comments. It fuels the channel. If you've got questions that need an answer or want to connect with like-minded people, find us on Telegram, link below. Let's spread this power. Take a moment to share this with your crew. Have a truly powerful day.